What is the Alexander technique? Our guest today is a senior teacher of the Alexander technique, an internationally recognised movement director. He's worked with major Hollywood stars, including Leonardo Dicaprio, Hilary Swank, and Chris Pine. Stay tuned, as this episode is full of wonder and wisdom. Happy Sunday, peeps! You're watching The Actor's Process, and I am your host and acting junkie, Claire Elizabeth D. And today, we're shooting at the Renaissance Theatre, and I'm delighted to share the stage with an expert Alexander technique teacher, Jean-Louis Rodrigue. Hey, Jean-Louis, how you going?
Hello, I'm doing great.
Thank you so much for coming and joining us at The Actor's Process.
Pleasure.
So, Jean-Louis, I know everyone must ask you this all the time, but for our viewers out there who don't know, what is the Alexander technique?
The Alexander technique was developed by a man, F.M. Alexander, who was an Australian actor.
Go, the Aussies.
Exactly. And it's about observing oneself and finding out how you can use yourself better. He was losing his voice all the time, and an actor without a voice is lost. And that's one of the things that is most ignored in acting, really, is the use of the voice and how an actor is using himself or herself in the acting process. So the Alexander technique is a study of oneself and one's habits and eliminating the stuff that gets in the way of expressing yourself in the most profound way.
So what's inspired you to dedicate your life to this technique and to sharing it with actors?
Well, you want to know the reality of it? It was a very selfish reason. I was acting back in New York and I kept losing my voice. I had asthma. So out of my real problem of asthma, I recognized in the Alexander technique something that was fundamental for me. I needed to connect with my breath. I needed to change that. And not only did it do that, but a whole bunch of wonderful things happened in the process.
What do you think is the most beneficial thing about the Alexander technique for actors?
Well, fundamentally, all that you have as an actor is yourself. And if you don't have access to yourself, to your voice, to your emotions, to your vision, to your imagination, there's no acting. And I find that in actors, the greatest problem is a certain amount of disconnection from the truth in oneself. So a lot of people can act and be, in a way, acty and show, but not speak from a place of truth.
So you do a lot of acting coaching with many A-list actors. So when you get the job, when in the rehearsal process do you actually start working with the actor?
As soon as possible. So as soon as they get the script and they know they're going to do something, they must know who I am already. Otherwise, their coaches, you know, Howard has sent me.
Larry Moss,
many coaches around the world, or a director, they will say, go work with Jean-Louis on preparation. And often it has to do with physicality, or with voice, or with aging, or with some form of connection to the physicality of the character.
And do you actually ever work with them on set? Are you actually there, like, with your hands on their body like you were with me?
I prefer not. I prefer to do it as before we start shooting.
Yeah.
But sometimes, if I've worked on set many times, yeah.
do you work with actors in their costumes? Like, for example, you did The Affair of the Necklace with Hilary Swank, and that was set in the 1700s in France. So did you work with that cast in costume?
I worked with the whole cast, and I did prepare them before they would do their scenes, and it was a lot of fun.
And you worked with Leonardo Dicaprio in J. Edgar, and in that movie we actually see the life of J. Edgar from when he's about 20 to 60. So what was your work with Leonardo?
It was about mapping out the aging process. He wanted to do it in a very realistic way. He did not want people to see him acting old. He wanted to be old. He wanted, and not only that, but he had to go through the psychological shift of the character. So we had to go historically through his changing and morphing into this old man that was the head of the FBI. And actually, I have some good stories about the FBI. It's
Would
very
you like
fun.
to share, Jean-Louis?
Yeah. How did you know? How did you know? After finishing working with Leo on J. Edgar, a few weeks later, I got a call from Howard Fine saying that the FBI wanted to have some coaching. And so we worked with 12 undercover agents.
Wow.
And a terrorist undercover agent. It was great. The best actors that I've ever worked with.
Yeah, they have to be committed.
Yeah, they have a lot on the line, indeed.
They do.
But it was so much fun. It was great.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you also worked with Mary McDonnell, and you worked with her
Passion Fish.
Passion Fish. I saw it last weekend, and I absolutely loved it. And her character is in a wheelchair. So
that's right. She's a paraplegic. She has an accident, a car accident. She loses.
And she's an actor as well. Yes,
Exactly,
the character.
exactly. And she said that she could only use the upper part of her body. She could not use her legs. So that was a challenge. That was a huge challenge. So I helped her get freer from the pelvis up to her head, and then the rest of the body was absolutely still.
Would she have had to spend a lot of time rehearsing in the wheelchair?
We spent weeks on the wheelchair, and it was very challenging and wonderful. I really enjoyed it tremendously.
Yeah, and she did such a terrific job.
She was nominated for an Oscar for that. Yeah,
she was brilliant.
Yeah, indeed.
So what do you suggest for actors, the seconds leading up to action or the seconds leading into them going onto stage? What can they do? Like, from an Alexander technique point of view, what would you recommend?
I always tell actors, I think there's a moment of anxiety and preconceiving what they're going to do, just the moment before they go on. And I always tell them, before you go on, you have to give yourself a moment of time to really reconnect. So I tell them I have time, so they can connect with their bodies, connect where they're coming from. Because characters, before they enter the set, they're coming from someplace. Something has happened. There's an emotional life, there's a physical life, there's an imaginative life. They're going someplace. There's an intent. So by connecting to your body and taking time and allowing the breath, and I'll talk more about the breath, they become more human. And that's what we want, that's what the camera catches, their humanity, their breathing, their, even if they're having a nervous breakdown, you still have to breathe.
So, Jean-Louis, what habits do actors have that they don't realise that they have that isn't really serving them when performing, when rehearsing?
Well, habits are the strongest forces in our lives. Habits are our strongest force in our lives, and often these habits are happening all the time. And actors, what they're bringing in is their behavior. Even though they might be working in a character that may be doing very different things from their own behavior. So it's complicated, and usually these habits have to do with having too much tension. And the tension goes to the neck. The first thing that happens, it goes to the neck. And when you compress your neck, and I'm doing it right now, and you tense, what happens, the head gets pulled down, back and down, and when that happens, you begin to shorten your stature, and the spine gets short, and then I can't breathe. And then as I cannot breathe, my hip joint gets tight, and my knees get tight. So all of a sudden, the actor is all bound up. And so there's very little expression or capacity to respond to you. And I probably should come out of it because I'm beginning to look terrible and not be able to take your lovely self into me. So yeah, that's what happens. That's the most common.
And you were saying before that you're fascinated at the moment with breath. So can we talk a bit more about breathing?
Yeah, breathing to me is the most delicate thing because usually what have our teachers told us? What does your teacher say?
Breathe.
Breathe, right? Breathe. And then when we breathe, when we are told to breathe, we exaggerate and we inhale and get ourselves stiffer.
Yeah.
You see?
We're always trying to demonstrate, aren't we, as well?
Exactly.
Like actors are always trying to demonstrate.
And what I've discovered is that the most important thing that we have to learn how to do is to allow the breath to come out, not to inhale. So we have to avoid as much as possible, especially as teachers, to tell our students to breathe. But rather is to let the breath go out, whatever breath you have, because then the inhalation is automatic. We have a very strange idea of breath. And yet, it's the most common thing in our lives. The two of us are breathing constantly.
Yeah.
And we don't have to necessarily think. We just have to learn to free it and free ourselves. And that's the complicated and wonderful thing that actors have to learn to appreciate.
And in the Alexander technique, I learnt with you, the whispered R.
Yeah.
Can we talk a bit about the whispered R?
Well, the whispered R really is the letting the breath out with a vowel and allowing the jaw to open up. It's very simple. I can do it now. So the inhalation is automatic. You just have to let whatever breath you have out. You see, and that's what most people can't do. They want to do, they want to vacuum air in, and that's a problem because that's where you're being fake. There's something fake about it.
Yeah, because we don't think about inhaling in everyday life.
Animals don't do that.
No.
Animals don't. You never see an animal do. They don't. Their breath is integrated with their behavior.
And I just realised we never discussed Life of Pi. What was your involvement with that film?
Well, I had a very fascinating involvement. I was training Ang Lee and his screenwriter, David McGee, with the movement of the tiger.
Wow.
So it was still in development when we were doing this. And Ang is such a perfectionist that he wanted to know everything about what I knew about tigers and what I knew about the relationship between tiger keepers and tigers. And he wanted me to show him. So he got on 4, did the tiger himself. Oh, it was great. It was incredible, including the screenwriter. And then he put that into the script. And you see it in the film, basically. You see it in the film in the wonderful work that he did.
So, Jean-Louis, with most of our guests, I ask them what is their favourite quote at the moment. But I thought it would be more appropriate to ask you, what's your favourite intention?
Well, yeah, I have a lot of intentions, but one of the things that I do on an ongoing basis is that I think of my head in relationship to my sits bones. And you'll ask me, why is that? Because if I think of the relationship between the top of my head to my sits bones, my neck releases immediately. Everybody's always asking, how do I relax my neck? How do I do it? Well, there's no such thing as the neck. The neck is a small part of the spine. So if I think of the relationship between the top of my head and my sits bones, all of a sudden, I get to be much more connected right here with you in this space. And I can use myself much better. You see, so the intention to be aware of oneself in totality, in the space that you're in, whatever it is that you're doing, whether you're shoveling dirt, or whether you're singing, or whether you're auditioning, it's always going to be better. And all of a sudden, that tension in the neck just goes away because you're thinking of the whole rather than this segment.
Yeah.
You see? The neck gets stiff because the rest of my body is asleep.
That's really different to when just thinking about the head sitting freely on the spine. That's a really different thought, thinking about, the head and then in relation to the sits
in
bone.
relationship to the sits bones. So you get to balance the whole lot.
Love it. Today's viewer question is from Francis Lawrence from New York City. Hi Jean-Louis, my name is Francis Lawrence and I am a professional dancer in New York City and also extremely interested in acting. Having worked with so many actors, did the Alexander technique work for everybody, and do you incorporate any other styles or techniques into your teaching?
That is a great question. No, I think I would like to think that the Alexander technique is for everybody, and I believe that everybody could use it. But I am eclectic, and I've studied dance all my life, and I've studied yoga, and I've studied Feldenkrais, I've studied an awful lot of things. So I don't think one thing helps someone. You have to learn to integrate a whole bunch of different things. You have to be hungry. And
Hungry to learn it all.
Yeah. And I'm in school right now learning the art of breathing, which is taught by a colleague of mine, an Alexander teacher, but it is really about the breathing mechanism. It really has to do with the breathing mechanism, and that is helping me an awful lot. So even though I've been teaching 35 years, I'm still learning. And
It's a process.
It's a process that never ends. And the Alexander technique, to me, it's at the very core of who I am. But there's no such thing as the Alexander technique. I've integrated into me, and it's teaching us really how we function, how we use our bodies every day. That's, to me, fundamental.
So, Jean-Louis, what is your daily habit?
All right, you really want to know, huh?
I really want to know.
Okay. My daily habit is to go to the refrigerator, and I have this drawer where usually people keep vegetables, and in it I have a lot of 70% chocolate. And my daily habit is to go on a daily basis, eat chocolate.
Now that is my kind of daily habit.
Yeah, and I'm really serious about it. I love it. Now, I'm sure you're asking for a actor process-oriented...
Well, it would be nice to know what habit could actors get into every day for their craft?
I think the most important thing about the Alexander technique and for actors is really to recognize that you have value in yourself. And I think actors really undervalue themselves. And they're always looking for other people to find some value in themselves, in other people, or when they hear an applause, or when they get the job. And I think that that is a huge problem. And I think that in learning to see yourself, So awareness, I would like actors to become more aware of themselves. So the base of the Alexander technique, when you say, I have time, you begin to feel the presence of yourself, even if you feel that, oh my God, I'm tense, or oh my God, I'm preoccupied. Because the next moment, what happens when you've become aware, there's always a change that happens. So if you're tense and all of a sudden you're recognizing that you're tense, the next thing that happens is people release. That's an improvement. Or if you're too focused on one thing, if you become aware that you're too focused on one thing, then you realize, oh my God, I'm in the world. And there's a whole world here. So the kinds of actors that I work with are actors that are always becoming more aware of who they are, who value themselves, and who become connected to the planet that they're into. And I think that's what actors have to do. I think that more empowered actors always make better actors.
What a great life lesson, John Loy. And thank you so much
You're
for
very welcome.
joining us on the Actors Process. If actors are interested in learning more about you and wanting to do maybe one of your acting intensives, what can they look out for?
They can go into my website. It's www.alexandertechworks.com.
Techworks.com.
Yes, and they can just go on it, and there's all kinds of information for them.
Thank you so much for your time, John Loy.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So, what mind, body, and spirit practice do you have for your acting? Check out this week's blog and leave us your feedback. A huge thank you to our viewers out there, and a big shout out to our amazing crew. Check out theactorsprocess.tv and find out how you can have your work seen by becoming our Viewer of the Month. So much is possible with the Actors Process with your support. So please like us on Facebook, follow our tweets, and please share this episode with your friends. Remember, be aware of yourself, value yourself, and breathe out. I'll see you next Sunday on the Actors Process.